Was there deliberate covering up, or are you saying that was...
I think in Rotherham there was deliberate covering up. Yes, I can speak to that one in a very detailed way because I was there for 6 months. We did the inspection and I saw it was the night in the inspection room where I was going through a child's file and I realised somebody had Tipexed out the word Pakistani, literally Tipex. People watching the programme may not even know what that is, but it's where you cover up a word. And I thought to myself as I picked it off with a paperclip, I thought, who did that person think they were helping?
Baroness Casey, thank you very much for being with us tonight. How do you feel about what Gemma and Fiona and thousands of girls have been through?
Well, sadly, it's not the first time I think I've even been in this studio. 10 years ago, I went to Rotherham. I did the inspection into Rotherham on child sexual exploitation. You were experiencing it before then. There are many other girls and now women who have been severely let down. I think what really has got to me a bit about doing this particular report is 10 years ago, I couldn't have been clearer, really, about what was happening in Rotherham. I said at the time there are national implications. This isn't the only place this is happening in. And then you can see over a long period of time, Victoria, that there have been lots of initiatives, lots of reviews, lots of this, lots of that, lots of reports, and yet it doesn't feel like it's come to anything that
so
is
are you angry?
Decisive enough. Yeah, I am. I'm raging, actually, on behalf of the victims. I mean, I may not look like it, but it's been... You know, it's been awful to realise that as a society we still don't see these girls as girls. We want to see them as wayward teenagers that are making difficult choices in their lives, that our rape laws don't seem to protect them. That was something I discovered in Rotherham when I was interviewing or listening actually to the testimony of a survivor who said that they groomed her. They said that they were in love with her. She thought they were in love with them. She was only 12 when it started. And then on her 13th birthday, multiple men, multiply raped her multiple times. That, I quote, was her birthday present. And they said to her, you will never be believed because you're now 13, which means you can consent. And everybody there are lots of people out there will say, oh, no, our age of consent, we do prosecute. The problem is that we need to put the onus on the men, the older men, who do this, and we've got to see girls as girls. And that's why I realise it's not just about child sexual exploitation. I want a clear rule that says, if you have penetrative sex with a child, we will come at you with rape, and it's mandatory, and there's no excuses, nothing to get in the way of it.
But it is 2025. How has this not happened already?
Well, I think overall in society, I think we see child abuse as being small kids in families, right? And I think that we have eyes on smaller kids. So women who get pregnant, they go to health visitors, there are midwives. Most people have their kids in hospital, then the kids grow up, they go to schools where there's one teacher. So the teachers in small schools, much more eyes on, pastoral care is easier. You can pick up the sights and sounds. And then, of course, you get to when kids get older, we have to want them to have more independence. But if only that was the story. The story is a lot of these survivors and victims today are actually kids that aren't on anybody's watch, who've gone missing. I thought missing would be, frankly, if a lot of people watching this programme tonight, if their 13, 14 or 15-year-old kid went missing overnight, they would be beside themselves, right? And yet, as a system, as in children's homes and foster homes, it's just a kind of tick. And I've never understood that. And I think when I went back and I looked at the data, I thought, no, this isn't good enough.
No.
Our safety net, the predators, the bad people, the really bad people, are the predators, and I use that word deliberately. they are prey, right? And they're looking for their prey. So what they do is they look at the safety net and they think, I know where I can get them. I can get them outside the kids' homes. These kids outside school, I know how to find these kids. I know how to tell them that I will love them better than the state, and they groom them.
Yes, but, Baroness Casey, there are adults in the form of police officers and people who run children's home and children's services and local councils and other adults in authority whose actual job is to protect those children, whichever kind of child this is, from whatever background, whatever class, however vulnerable. But they weren't doing it. Were they worrying about their own reputations or what?
So I think that part of the, in Rotherham 10 years ago, I felt very strongly and very clearly, because remember I was there for 6 months only concentrating in one place, that actually there were a number of reasons. I think that they thought these kids were too hard, that they weren't worth it, that actually they were teenage prostitutes, frankly, that we didn't see them as children. Now, that's not, there are huge numbers of social workers and teachers and police officers that get up every single day wanting the world to be a better place. But, the council itself in Rotherham, didn't sufficiently look hard at this. So they spent more money. When I got there, we realised they were spending more money on the training of social workers to deal with Ofsted than they were on their child sexual exploitation team. That tells you all you need to know. And then on top of that, let's just own it, there is an issue of, in some areas, in some towns, where actually historically we weren't upfront about the fact. Rotherham is one of them. South Yorkshire Police was there at the time. I never got to inspect them. I wish I had done at that period, where actually I think people were turning, at best, a blind eye to some of these issues because it was in the too difficult box, and the too difficult box is ethnicity.
Well, let's talk about that, because you said questions about ethnicity have been asked but dodged for years for fear of inflaming local tensions. You said child sexual exploitation is horrendous, whoever commits it, but there have been enough convictions across the country of groups of men from Asian ethnic backgrounds to have warranted closer examination. Who was dodging questions about ethnicity? What kind of people? OK, so let's take the here and now. The audit was commissioned by the Prime Minister in January when everybody was going backwards and forwards. Should we have a national inquiry? You're bad because you won't have one. It's this, it's that. We think it's masses of grooming gangs, right? And what he wanted, and now I realise why and how important it was, he wanted to get a grip of what the data said, like what is going on, what are the facts. So, the irony of this, if anybody thought they were being helpful with this, they were not being helpful to anyone, not just the victims, but actually Pakistani heritage and Asian communities. The national data that we collect, as in the police collect on behalf of the Home Office, is partial. We get 34% completion rate of ethnicity. And then what I started to realise is that then that data is used to say that it's 88% white. And this is being repeated now. So I go back to the 2020 report produced by the Home Office. And in that report, and I've looked at the run-up to it and the after of it, they do a very similar thing, which is they say there's all of these issues of ethnicity, we must look at them carefully, but overall, on balance, child sexual exploitation is essentially primarily a white issue. And then I look at, I can't get national data because why? It's too difficult for you to collect it. No, if you don't collect, either don't collect something or do collect something. The worst thing you can do on an issue of race and ethnicity is half collect it. It doesn't help anyone. So then you end up look like you're covering up. And then, of course, that's a gift to the people that want to sow hate, really. So it doesn't help anybody at all. And then was there deliberate covering up? Or are you saying that was...
I think in Rotherham there was deliberate covering up. Yes, I can speak to that one in a very detailed way because I was there for 6 months. We did the inspection and I saw it was the night in the inspection room where I was going through a child's file and I realised somebody had Tipexed out the word Pakistani, literally Tipex. People watching the programme may not even know what that is, but it's where you cover up a word. And I thought to myself, as I picked it off with a paperclip, I thought, who did that person think they were helping? Either they were worried about, people get worried, Victoria, about organisational reputation, they get worried about their own, people say we've got community tensions. You know, the English Defence League had parked out in Rotherham when I was there and were demonstrating week in, week out. If you'd been a Muslim Pakistani heritage woman scarfed walking through that town, it would have been impossible. So if you think you're helping her, you're not helping her. If you think you're standing up for the victims, you're not standing up for the victims, you're not helping anyone.
I've got a couple more.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely pertinent that you talk about this in detail tonight, and we're very, very happy to hear you talk about this to our audience. The collection of the data, what do you expect government, police forces, councils to do with it when it does improve, assuming it does improve? What will change on the ground?
So, I mean, my starting point of this is that if you look at what we know about ethnicity in 3 large force areas, which is West Yorkshire, Greater Manchester Police and South Yorkshire, if you add to that we've got, I looked at 50 serious case reviews where child sexual exploitation was the subject. Most of those serious case reviews don't actually talk about the perpetrators, let alone their ethnicity, remember, but that's a different issue. And I've only had 1 serious case review done on the back of one of these horrendous high-profile cases since 2018. And then you look at the I think, and I've asked for in one of my recommendations, is that there is now a deep piece of work done looking at what are the cultural drivers behind Pakistani heritage and Asian communities, whether they're social, cultural or religious. We need to get on top of that, and I think we're letting down the victims if we don't do that, and we're letting down those very communities.
Do you agree, Gemma, Fiona, that victims are being let down, survivors are being let down, if that data isn't collected in an accurate way?
I think the data needs to be collected so it can be used to build up a framework for education, for prevention, without an accurate insight of what is involved in the perpetrators, not just ethnicity, but to do with like criminal backgrounds, class, age, all these different things, then we're not going to be able to build up an education programme that targets specific people that it needs to.
And I think what's so interesting about that is I've worked in the world of crime for years on and off, and it is completely normal to say, this is the crime that's going on. How do we stop it? So if we don't understand it, if we don't learn about it sufficiently, we won't know how to stop it.
We did the same with domestic violence and every other crime there is, and then the framework is built up based off of that data that comes, and then it's used to target in a specific way that the people that need to hear it are going to understand, and I don't understand why it was prevented in this case.
Gemma, can I ask you about the fact that there is going to be, Baroness Casey has recommended this national inquiry, which is going to be overseen by an independent commission which has full statutory inquiry powers. It's time limited, it's targeted, it's proportionate to the number of victims, and it will oversee localised inquiries. That is a change of heart from the government because, as the Prime Minister said, he'd read every word of Baroness Casey's report. What do you think of that approach now? What's going to happen?
What worries me is how long is it going to take? How many more girls are going to be abused? It's only going to get worse. So we need to work on prevention. We need to be in schools, in care homes, in youth clubs on a monthly basis. We need to be teaching these girls how to keep themselves safe because we're never going to stop it. It's only going to get worse. And yes, OK, this inquiry is brilliant. It might give some people justice, historical cases, but we can't keep talking about history. We've got to move forward and we've got to work on prevention and save our children because they're not safe.
Is that fair? They're not safe now?
Well, child abuse, domestic violence, it's men perpetrating against women and girls. So, yes, people need to look out for themselves. I do think we need to tackle men's behaviour and boys as they grow up. It's fine saying girls need to look after themselves. These are 13 and 14-year-old girls. They don't need to look after themselves. It's my job, your job, our job to look after them. I think the other thing is that because the National Inquiry has been like a high-profile thing because of all the politics, that I want consent changed. I want better protection for victims. I want a national criminal investigation. So my biggest thing is actually the criminal investigation of the here and now. Yeah. So I've looked at the techniques for serious and organised crime, which some of the better investigations do. And I think they are much better at making the connections between different parts of the country, between different, you were saying yourself, you were moved from different places. Yeah. You need top cops to try and work that one out. So my top priority from that perspective is to do the here and now, to actually have better protection,
which is what you definitely want.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things, like you've said there, is it isn't just about teaching the victims either. From my experience, that older men would groom younger boys to become groomers themselves. It's about teaching them the warning signs of inappropriate behaviour being taught to them. So we don't want to just be targeting the victims or potential victims. That's why we need the data about the perpetrators, so we can try and intervene, because it is important to tackle it from all sides. I do think agencies should be looking into survivor-led education within schools and within services.
What do you think of the politicisation of it?
I'm disappointed by it, to put it mildly. I think I really hoped and hope still that the report is so clear, it's so straightforward. We need to change some laws, we need to do a national criminal investigation, we need to get on with a national inquiry with local footprint in it. And ideally, wouldn't it be great if everybody came behind that and just backed it and got on with it?
Did you, I don't know if you were able to see what the conversations in the Commons, the statements in the Commons, did you see politicisation in the Commons today?
Yes, as I was leaving to actually go and do my own work on this, I just felt that moment really, dare I say it, that I felt the opposition could have just been a bit, yes, we will all come together behind you. Maybe there's still time to do that. I think it's just so important that they do. It almost doesn't matter right now, does it, what political party people are part of, that we've identified there's a problem. It's been a problem there a long time, and it's about time we drew a line in the sand.
If you would like any support or information as a result of tonight's conversations, you can contact the BBC's Action Line. There's the number 08000 077 077, or you can go to bbc.co.uk/action line.
He was like, where have you been? You've just been in government. You were the policing minister and the children's minister. Where have you been? And frankly,
but was that a knee-jerk reaction simply because they are politicians on the right?
No, I think it's because they're politicians who had never cared and thought it was politically expedient.
The government today accepted all of Baroness Casey's recommendations in full and also apologised to survivors. Earlier, I spoke to the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips. I pointed out to her that some survivors had been calling for a national inquiry into grooming gangs for some time.
There are also survivors who didn't want that, and that remains the case. It was Fiona on your programme who said that she didn't want a national inquiry. What she wanted was a local inquiry with statutory powers. And then in speaking to her more thoroughly after your TV programme, and I have to say others who'd said similar things, and then Louise Casey also came out with that recommendation, that I can't please all people, and victims are not one homogenous group.
That's true. But you listened to the ones who wanted localised inquiries rather than the ones who wanted a national one.
Not necessarily. What I had to do, and what I will always do, is make the decisions on the basis of what I have seen work. And I watched the Telford inquiry work. I saw genuine local change, actually, and action that continues today, continues to be monitored today. Now, what I found was since January is, completely compelling arguments now being made by Louise Casey, and ones that I had come to agree with in conversations, including with Fiona, about the need for areas to be compelled and also for them to be able to compel witnesses.
But could you have got to that earlier?
Well, maybe I could have, maybe I could have got to that earlier. I'm not going to follow a sort of like a furore or a political game. I wanted the job that I have, and I believe the Prime Minister gave it to me, is because I deeply, deeply care and want to do the right thing. So I'll put my hands up if people think that I should have come to it sooner. Whatever it comes from a place. And what has been bandied about in the meantime, the idea that I'm trying to cover something up, it's insulting. It's insulting to all of the victims who I work with and have worked with and have tried to get justice for, in some cases been successful, in too many unsuccessful.
You mentioned the Prime Minister. You will remember that he described the calls back in January for a national inquiry as people jumping on a bandwagon of the far right. When you reflect on that, was that wise?
Look, I think that what the Prime Minister was saying was, this was in the wake of sort of Elon Musk furore, was that the Conservative politicians, Kemi Badenoch, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, that he was saying they were jumping on the bandwagon of Elon Musk talking about on Twitter. I think it was actually Liz Truss. She gets forgotten in this story. Liz Truss who started it, and then Elon Musk carried it on. Is that he was like, where have you been? You've just been in government. You were the policing minister and the children's minister. Where have you been? And frankly,
but was that a knee-jerk reaction? Simply because they are politicians on the right?
No, I think it's because they're politicians who had never cared and thought it was politically expedient.
Baroness Casey's report says questions about ethnicity have been asked but dodged for years, and there have been enough convictions across the country of groups of men from Asian ethnic backgrounds to have warranted closer examination. Mm-hmm. When you reflect on all the work you have done over years to help survivors, do you think you were curious enough about the ethnicity of perpetrators?
I absolutely was curious enough when you're asking me from as a frontline practitioner.
So you wanted to know why it was predominantly men of Pakistani heritage?
I've always wanted to understand, and of course, what Baroness Casey has looked into is 3 particular police force areas, and actually my experience of grooming gangs is that it looks different in different areas, but there has been predominantly, in the organised grooming, the people have been of Pakistani, British Pakistani ethnicity. So this is that is no surprise to me.
But did you want to know why? Why? Did you ask why?
But of course. But the reality is that so many reports then, in fact, including the one that you cite from the Home Office, told a different story. The current data tells a different story, and on your programme, I'm not surprised that the victims looked at the data that was presented to them and felt that it was unrepresentative.
So when Baroness Casey says today, it is not racist to want to examine the ethnicity of offenders,
of course not.
You say absolutely right.
Of course not. Okay. I didn't think it was in forced marriage. I didn't think in moving forward on forced marriage. I didn't think it was racist in moving forward on female genital mutilation. I didn't think it was racist.
So sorry, when people say you and others in Labour, in the Labour Party, in opposition and in government, have stuck your head in the sand about this.
I mean, that people can. There are undoubtedly people who have. I'm not going to, and Louise Casey finds that, and there is plenty of anecdote, for example, around Anne Cryer, a Labour MP who spoke up about this, being told to keep it quiet by people, from within the Labour Party.
And Maggie Oliver herself, a whistleblower, says Labour and the Tories have both turned a blind eye.
Maggie Oliver is absolutely right. When Sarah Champion came out and spoke about it at the time, I completely and utterly supported her. So look, people have turned a blind eye. There's I'm not denying that.
Including you?
Absolutely not me. I have never turned a blind eye. I never would shy away from calling a problem what it is.
Is the government concerned about the possibility of any unrest or violence in the wake of the publication of this report?
It would be horrifying, as it was after Southport, if the news story about this stopped being about young women like Jade and Fiona and started to be about people causing unrest.
Have you had death threats today?
I always have ongoing police investigations, and whenever this raises its head in the news, then of course, I it ramps up some of the rhetoric and the threats against me. So yes, I have, and it is particularly galling, I have to say, because it is the anniversary of the death of my dear friend Jo Cox. But this morning I woke up thinking about her, and I often wish that she was with me on days like today, because she would always just keep me going. And what I know is that she would say, keep going, stick with it, stick to the plan.
Jess Phillips, thank you very much for talking to Newsnight.
No worries.